Learner diversity, that's the title of my talk. And what is learner diversity? If I had a bit more time, what I would do is I would do a little activity, a little exercise, asking you, what does that mean to you? So what I'd like you to do, if you can, is to write on the chat online, what does learner diversity mean? What is it in your head? What sort of contexts do you have in front of you when you teach? To me, usually learner diversity is something related to special educational needs. All of a sudden, I think of people with learning needs, with perhaps disabilities, because I'm fascinated about the topic. I'm fascinated about teaching languages for all, and fascinated about creating accessible materials for all based on theories that build on universal design, for example. But if I could be reading at this point what you're writing on the streaming, or if I could go into my colleagues' heads here, which might be a bit dangerous, I might see things like different proficiency levels, financial issues. We had a very good question at the beginning of the multiplier event this morning saying, what happens when our students don't have the technology at home? And that is a reality. That's what it is out there. Other things, perhaps behavioral issues, cognitive challenges, etc. There are many, many different meanings for learner diversity. Here at TeCoLa, we will try to build and create materials and support all language teachers involved with us in trying to reach as many students as possible, and everyone in our classrooms and all the different contexts we have. Differentiation. What is differentiation? Perhaps we can find an easy way to define it, not as complicated as all the different meanings for, we just saw for learner diversity, which would be the process by which differences between learners are accommodated so that all students in a group have the best possible chance of learning. That's a very sort of basic definition from the UK Training and Development Agency for Schools. However, differentiation has multiple interpretations, or perhaps not interpretations, but it materializes differently in different contexts. If I think of differentiation here in the UK, I know it's present in teacher training modules. I know it's a key skill for our teachers, and in specific for language teachers as well. I know it is a worry and something that is really high in the agendas of the teachers that took the survey that we had at the beginning of the TeCoLa project. And in the case of special educational needs and support in schools, for example, in the UK, all schools have a SENCO. It stands for a Special Educational Needs Coordinator. And it is a very active role and supports teachers. This, if I think of Spain, is not exactly the same. Not all schools have this kind of figure, and the case might be different in Belgium or in Germany, so we need to think of that as well. And in order to do so, what we are trying to do is to incorporate learner differences and differentiated pedagogical practices in the tasks that we are creating for you. We are designing them now and developing them now as well. And the tools that we are talking about, and I think it's important for you to see them, they are on this open educational resources pool. You have seen screenshots, but it is a very active and interesting website where you can actually, where you can already find tasks for you to adapt. As I said, we're talking about different contexts. They are very easily adaptable, and they are there for you to fit them into your contexts, and we can certainly help with that. Why? Why do we need to differentiate? Well, we need to differentiate in order to facilitate and support inclusive education and become better at teaching all students together, regardless of their abilities, disabilities, or background experiences. We see more and more that our classes are heterogeneous. They don't look anything like, perhaps if you are younger they do, but if not, they don't look anything like the type of classes we experienced when we were younger. So we need to bear that in mind, and we need to know about the different approaches there are for differentiation, and perhaps just take a multimodal approach and use different ways of teaching. Here at TeCoLa, our aim is to target diversity in 3 interrelated levels. We want to target it, as we said, at local level, perhaps start small and see what is the context that we have and the diversity in our classroom. Then we would also like to include as many institutions as possible. We want to have Montessori schools, we want to have vocational schools, and we all obviously want to have as diverse as possible secondary contexts with different challenges and with different diversities. And obviously, we also want to go international. We want to have exchanges, gamified telecollaborative exchanges in different parts of Europe or even of the world, if we can. Differentiation in TeCoLa. We are, at this point, considering 2 main dimensions: the teacher-dependent dimension and the student-dependent dimension. That's what we have in our language classrooms. That's what we see. How can a teacher differentiate? There are experts who claim there are up to 7 different ways to differentiate. We have chosen 4. You might think of this with different terms. It's just an idea for you to see that we can just like target something and make a difference with just one specific thing. And the 4 things I'd like to mention are content, process, product, and environment. We will give you examples of all of these later on. And then there's the student dimension, and this dimension has to do with differentiation according to students' readiness, according to students' interest, and student learning profile, the different styles of learning. I will talk a little bit about the student-dependent dimension now, and then what I will do for the rest and final part of the talk is to talk mainly about examples on how to differentiate from the teacher's dimension. With regards to the student-dependent dimension, yes, that photo, perhaps our classrooms don't look like jungles, but it means that our students have different needs. They are ready to do things that others are not ready to do, and they have different learning profiles or styles. But they are all together, and we need to cater for all of them. We need to reach all of them. We believe that with technology, and obviously very creative teachers behind it, we can increase learner motivation. We can use virtual worlds, as you have seen already. We can use blogs, we can use wikis. We are currently here in the Council of Wandsworth, and I was just reading an article on my way here that said, Wiki gives young people a voice. So we can use these tools in order for some of our students who might be shy or who might otherwise not be able to express themselves to have a voice and to have a saying. And of course, there is a vast array of tools available for everyone, so we can also cater for students with different technological preferences or even resources. And we can let them be present in different ways. We can see different worlds, for example, in virtual worlds that we saw France, and they can be represented in these worlds, and that's something that is empowering. That's something that we like. And Nick saw his little French village before because he likes that, but obviously I'm a bit biased, and I will show you another one that he has created, and some of you might recognize. So we have Valencia here with some tables and horchata. So why not tell our students, just go there and be proud of where you're from and show other people in the world where you come from. From the teacher-dependent dimension, I said content, process, product, and environment. Content-wise, we can be using different content. We can, these days with internet, we have as much material as we want out there, and we can just like find it quite easily. However, it might not be accessible for everyone. Or we can augment the materials that we already have. And that would be making existing content available. I will give two examples of that. A bit more clear than here, but it would be locating content and concept mapping. With regards to process, it is about focusing on the students' needs, how we lead them towards that learning. Products, how students express their understanding, giving them different ways to express their understanding. Sometimes we have to ask them to just like pass a final exam, but why? We can just give them different options to show their understanding. And environments, that is to do with the classroom, manipulating the environments to support all learners. Obviously, when I think of a classroom, I feel that I'm limited. I've got 4 walls. I cannot spread my wings. I cannot fly like in the virtual world. I cannot sometimes move the tables. So, hey, technology actually allows us to manipulate that space. And while I'm saying this, it's coming to my mind that it is perhaps just choosing something from each of them, just using different approaches to teaching. It is obviously natural that if we like one approach, we will use that approach. But sometimes it's just about knowing about them all that we can start applying different things to different contexts. So how can telecollaboration and gamification facilitate differentiation? Well, content-wise, we can locate content quite easily in our open educational resource pool. We will always provide videos with subtitles that have captions so that students can read at the same time that they see the videos, and they can also link what they see to vocabulary, so perhaps it even leads to some vocabulary acquisition practices with the images. And in any case, if you need other videos, just remember using subtitles is crucial. And obviously, we can also see that they can be accessed as many times as the students might need. Augmenting the content that we already have. We might love to work with a passage that we've used for many years and it's got the content that we need, but it's text-based. Let's offer it to our students with technology in different ways. Let's find a way to make it really engaging. Let's use a concept mapping, for example, like Bubble Us. Any tool that I mentioned today is free, so you can, as teachers, use it in your classroom from tomorrow, perhaps from Monday even. But Bubble Us, you can create concept maps, and the students can create concept maps together, so it could become perhaps even a gamified activity, or use a Wordle that is also a very neat tool that creates word clouds with the frequency of the repetitions of the words, for example. So visualize, text is also a different way to reach all students in a classroom. With regards to process, flexible grouping, maybe I'm not saying anything new here, but it's just that technology might allow us to think of pairing our students differently. We can think of what was said before about the expert and novice learner, the different proficiency levels. We can maybe mix abilities in how we pair our students, and maybe they can become part of a bigger group later on in the virtual world, for example. Also, with regards to process, and really, really important, extending learning time. Sometimes the time that we have for teaching is not enough for all our learners. And differentiation has actually been proven to be a really good approach, both for gifted students, but also for underachieving students, for both. So if we use the differentiation, we can extend the learning time. We can use learning or virtual platforms that you might have at your own institutions already. Students can go back and forth and check their notes or teacher notes or videos or comments from other learners. We said we can use Big Blue Button, which is another really neat tool that allows you to share the screen with another student and talk on real time. Padlet, for brainstorming sessions, for example. Pupils who might not want to raise their hand and talk in front of an audience, they are really sometimes happy to, not always, but perhaps happy to talk on behind the screen. Blogs, we can create blogs, even email or other platforms. So if we think of how it extends the learning time, that is already something that is helping all our students. And with regards to how we process information, we can create vocabulary quizzes, for example, according to ability. And we could use a tool like Kahoot. And by using Kahoot, we can create different levels of quizzes, and we can also provide support to our learners. We can add messages of encouragement and clues for our learners, and it's pretty easy. And I know Kahoot is a tool that is being used more and more, but perhaps with having one template, we can just adapt it. And all our tasks, or most of our tasks, have been thought with differentiation and learner diversity, with all its meanings, of course, in mind. So we have already developed tasks that use Kahoot in these different ways. Products, for example, let's think of digital storytelling, and the potential task could be, when we were writing this presentation, sadly, the Grenfell Tower accident happened, and we thought of organize a fundraiser for Grenfell Tower victims. Perhaps we organize that as a task, and then we don't say, and the product for this has to be done as a presentation to the class. But we offer different ways for students to present their understanding. It's really important, and that will motivate them, and that will give them autonomy and empower them. One way could be, for example, design task A there, design a poster to advertise the event using PictoChart. All our posters for this event have been done with PictoChart. Or Glockster, we could put together a program of activities which are interactive by using an interactive poster. Or using SurveyMonkey, we can design an online quiz, for example, for a fundraising activity, or a website for an event. And perhaps even, as we were mentioning before with a colleague, we can do this and go to the council and have a say with our product and our materials. We can actually change things. Also to do with product, how to evaluate these students' products. Telecollaboration and gamification allow us for like self-assessment options, self-check quizzes, peer assessment, in expert-novice interactions, and much more. And there are so many other tools. I'm just really restricted with time. But we can create different rubrics for our tasks, for example. And there's a very neat tool called RubyStar. Just there, RubyStar, that allows teachers to create rubrics really quickly and adapt one that we really like with different information. Or another tool called PBL Checklist, Project-Based Learning Checklist, that creates checklists for our students. Some of the students might need to be seeing what they've done so far in order to finish that activity. So there are really good tools out there that we are implementing in our tasks so that differentiation is already present there. And just before I finish, with regards to the environment and the sensory experiences that we can have, for example, in virtual world, they can meet regularly, they can meet in the classroom or outside, and for example, they can meet and talk through the real live chat, so it opens up a new world for them.